Call to order the meeting of March 13th, 2013 of the Planning Commission of the Town of Los Gatos. Could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Sayoc.
Here.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Here.
Commissioner Bourgeois.
Here.
Commissioner Birch.
Here.
Vice Chair Smith.
Here.
And Chair Erickson.
Here. Would everyone please join and stand Commissioner O'Donnell in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we proceed into the agenda this evening, I'd like to be clear with everyone that the Town of Los Gatos is strongly encourages, as does this commission, active participation on the part of the public. It's a hallmark and a critical element of democracy in the town, and it's critical to this commission conducting its business in a proper and meaningful way on behalf of the town council and the citizens of the town. There are generally 2 or 3 different ways that the public can participate. We always encourage the public to make written comments about items that are on the agenda and get them to the staff ahead of time so they can be incorporated in the packet for a particular item. At the meetings, there are 2 opportunities for people to address the commission. One is when there is an agendized item for the meeting where we take public comments during the public portion of the public hearing. The other is what we call verbal communications, which is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on any topic that they would like that is not on the agenda of a particular meeting. If you want to speak in either of those 2 cases this evening, we would appreciate your filling out what we call as the speaker's card, which are on the back of the benches in the chamber, and return it to the clerk to my left. And it would be great if you would print your name very carefully, and if it's appropriate, to help me by giving me little cues phonetically about how to pronounce your name. Anyway, we have minutes from the February 27th meeting of the Planning Commission that was distributed to the Commission ahead of time. Are there corrections, additions, comments on the minutes, or a motion to approve? Commissioner Sayoc.
I move to approve the minutes from February 27, 2013.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Sayoc, a second by Commissioner Bourgeois. Any further comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. We have a couple of desk items this evening, one of which is a request to continue item number 3 on the agenda, which we will come back to in a moment. The other is a desk item for agenda item number 2, which is some supplemental information for the item that we will consider item number 2. So I would ask members of the commission, would you like to take a moment now or later to finish reading the material, or has everyone had a chance to review it? We're okay? Is everyone okay with the material? Okay, great. So we have 2, so as a result, we have 2 requested continuances this evening. The first is a requested continuance on item number 1 on the agenda, which is architectural and site application S-12-040 at 128 Yosemite Way. Does the staff have any additional comments to add to the requested continuance?
No.
Are there questions or comments from any of the commissioners? So I would invite a motion to continue this item to the April 10th meeting of the Planning Commission.
So moved.
So moved by Commissioner Smith.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Birch. Any comments? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. We also have a requested continuance on item number 3, which is a conditional use permit U13011 at 50 University Avenue Space A290. Does staff have any comments about that?
No additional comments.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commission about that requested continuance? If not, I would invite a motion to continue this item to the March 27th, 2013 meeting of the commission.
So moved.
So moved by Commissioner Smith.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Bourgeois. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. In addition to the service on the Planning Commission, the commission members serve on several town committees. There was a meeting of the Conceptual Design Advisory Committee this afternoon, and Commissioner Smith is going to report on that meeting.
Thank you, Chair. We considered one item today, and that was the property off of Prospect owned by the Sisters of the Holy Name. The commission as a whole saw that the sisters had been very careful in their sense of stewardship of the property and presented a plan that was to develop 17 single-family homes on the property, all of which, in its conceptual design at least, would comply with the regulations that would be attributable to that particular land. And so we did, commissioners did make a number of comments relating to one of the lots as a flag lot or an almost flag lot, and also some issues in terms of ingress and egress. But besides that, the plan did look, in this conceptual phase, look acceptable to the all of the committee members. And it will, I believe that Sister Mary Pat said that within the next few weeks, they will be filing for an architectural and site plan.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Any questions for Commissioner Smith? The next item on our agenda is what we call verbal communications, which again is an opportunity for any member of the public to speak on any item that is not on the agenda. Tonight we don't have any speaker cards, or no one has identified themselves as being interested in speaking, so unless someone wants to come forward now, we'll move on. The next item on our agenda is a public hearing considering plan development application PD 11006, negative declaration ND 11008, and architectural site application S 12098, requesting approval for rezoning to allow for the construction of a new junior high school facility and to modify existing school operations and to continue church services and activities by St. Mary's at 219 Bean Avenue. May I first have a show of hands from the commissioners who visited the property? Are there any disclosures by commissioners for this item? Commissioner Bourgeois.
Thank you, Chair Erickson. My wife and I attend St. Mary's, and I have contributed financially both to the parish and the school. However, I have no personal interest in this particular application, and I'm quite confident I can participate without bias.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Donnell.
I'm in the same position that Commissioner Bourgeois is. I'm a longtime member of the parish. I support the parish both in regular contributions and projects. My children, however, did not go to the grammar school there, and I feel I can sit without conflict. I did discuss this with the town attorney to make sure that that decision could be mine, and she said it could be. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. Ms. Savage, may we have a brief staff report?
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. The existing CUP was approved in 1985 and permits a church, a school, and accessory uses in conjunction with the church and school. The proposed project includes a plan development application and an architecture and site application. The plan development includes rezoning to permit the plan development overlay, construction of a new junior high school, modifications to school operations and the lower school building, continuation of church services and activities, and operational changes to the school, which include increasing the number of students to that which they have been using for over 10 years, and also increasing the number of staff and increasing the grades from 1 through 8 to kindergarten through 8. The architecture and site application includes the demolition of 59 Victory Lane, the existing building there, as well as the existing covered seating area, and then the construction of a new junior high school building, modifications to the lower school, and a new covered eating area. The project was reviewed by the town's architectural consultant, and the recommendations made by the consultant are incorporated into the proposed plans. The project was also reviewed by our environmental consultant, and a mitigated neg deck is recommended. Mitigation measures from that environmental review are incorporated into the plan development. You do have a desk item tonight. It contains a copy of the existing conditional use permit. It also contains public comments, a new performance standard proposed to address some of those public comments, and modification to a performance standard regarding the number of staff. The project before you would permit updates to the existing St. Mary's School and parish operations and facilities, including the new junior high school, and updating the permitted number of students to levels that they have been using for a number of years. Town staff and the consulting architect believe that the design of the new junior high school is acceptable, including the height of the new junior high school. This concludes staff presentation, and staff is available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Savage. Are there questions, Commissioner Bourgeois?
Thank you, Ms. Savage. I have a question about the existing CUP. So it looks though the school is operating already out of compliance with their existing CUP. How does the town become aware of that, and what, if anything, are the ramifications of operating outside their CUP?
The town was made aware of that as the school came in to request modifications to their property in terms of structures. We were made aware of it a number of years ago, and the school had been working with the town to modify their conditional use permit to correct that. It has taken a number of years to go work towards that process, as staff had suggested that they build in a whole master plan of development on the site, not just for the conditional use permit modifications regarding student levels, but really what their ultimate plan for the campus was, involving both the church and the school. In terms of ramifications, until more recently, the town's process was to allow certain uses to continue outside of their conditional use permit if they were operating outside of it, subject to them proceeding with the process to correct that. That process has recently changed at the end of last year per town council direction, but because this application was submitted before that, they were allowed to continue that, and they were going through the process for these modifications.
Okay, thank you. A couple follow-ups to that, if I may. One, I'd like to understand what the council direction is moving forward for such similar circumstances. And also, I want to make sure I understand. So if they hadn't come back to us for another application of some sort, we would have not have known that they were operating out of compliance. There's no reporting mechanism, like on an annual basis?
There is none for this existing CUP, no.
Okay. And then if you could clarify what the town council direction is on those cases moving forward.
It is to require uses to come into compliance to what is actually permitted until and if they receive approval otherwise.
Commissioner Sayoc.
Thank you, Chair. I have several questions. The first, just to piggyback Commissioner Bourgeois, during the time that they were out of compliance, were there any community complaints with regard to the number of students over, or perhaps parking?
The staff is not aware of any, no.
Okay, thanks. The second question, you mentioned that the desk item contained performance standards that are in that were address the community letters that you had gotten, or did I misunderstand that?
There is a performance standard proposed in there that would address some. The desk item notes that some of the concerns that the public comments raise are in regards to construction, parking, and traffic, as well as parking in the residential neighborhoods.
Okay,
Sorry.
I'm sorry, but I can't find it in my copy,
Okay.
at least.
One moment. Oh, okay. We are missing a page from the desk item. One moment. Staff is working to obtain the page 2 that is missing, but in the meantime, the public comments did comment on those 2 items, the construction, parking, and traffic, and then the parking in the residential neighborhood. The existing performance standards that you have in your staff report include a construction management plan, as well as a traffic plan for construction, and both of those are standard conditions, and they're required before any permits are issued. Those would address most of the concerns. The performance standard that's included in the desk item that we're getting for you was a condition that proposed limiting construction access to just one point on the site, specifically to Linden Avenue. Also noted in the missing page of the desk item, I apologize, is that the applicant is not amenable to that Linden Avenue restriction for construction, and part of that comes from conflicts with pedestrian access. That particular location is an area where there's a lot of pedestrian access from students coming and going to school, as well as walking between the administrative buildings and the lower school.
And one more question. If you could just walk me through the parking. The staff report talked about what the existing CUP requirement is, what the proposed requirement is, and what is being provided. But I think I'm missing a big piece of it. So if I add the school and the church required parking, I'm coming up with 164. Oh, I'm sorry, 210. Yet the total parking provided is 111. Can you just walk me through the discrepancy and what suggestions or conditions are being worked out to address the difference?
So there are two pieces to that. The first one being that the church was approved with a conditional use permit back in '85 with that parking requirement of 105 parking spaces. It was approved in pursuant to town code, which allows church uses to continue intermittently. And the town code also requires that the use, if it's non-conforming as to parking, which the church was at the time, to provide parking to the greatest extent feasible. When the existing conditional use permit went through, they had about 23 less parking spaces than the 105 spaces. So through that process, they did exert the effort to provide parking to the greatest extent feasible, and therefore the conditional use permit was approved pursuant to town code. In regards to the second piece on the uses, the church use and the school use, adding up to more spaces than required, the school uses generally operate without church uses at the same time, and that's where the difference between 105 parking spaces and then the parking spaces required for the school plus the church come from.
Commissioner Smith.
If I could just go back to the traffic, and we're waiting for the missing piece here, but does the information that you're providing also talk about the adequacy of circulation? I noticed that in previous years, or the document that was given to us, it indicated that the Planning Commission would review the traffic impact and adequacy of circulation. And because that was raised in letters from the residents, I'm wondering if that has also been addressed at this time.
It was not included in the desk item, but it is addressed in the traffic study. The traffic study does look at the impact to streets from the impact of the school. Correct.
Other questions of the staff at this time? Commissioner Bourgeois.
Could I also get clarification on why the rest of the improvements, like the addition to the lower school, demolition of the teen center, construction of a new rectory, why that's a separate application, why that needs to be a separate A&S, and we can't hear all that together?
The school will be performing improvements to the campus in phases, and the first phase includes the scope of work that's included in the subject architecture and site application. When the school is ready to go forward with other phases of the scope of work proposed through the plan development, they will be required to come back for an architecture and site application at that time.
So the PD is going to set the larger master plan picture for those improvements.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions of the staff at this time? If not, we will open the public portion of the public hearing, and as I understand, Jeff Berg is going to represent the applicant. So, Mr. Berg, you'd have 5 minutes to address the council. Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name is Jeffrey Berg, address 60 Pierce Avenue in San Jose, California, 95110.
You want to see if you can turn the mic on? I think it doesn't.
Got a green
Is
light.
it-
And I can't see. Is that better?
Or at least let's see if we can speak into it.
Is that better?
Yes,
Okay.
got it.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the commission. Thank you for our time tonight. Understanding that we are the only one on the agenda, we're proud and happy to have your undivided attention. We are pleased with the staff's findings of our project and welcome the recommendation for approval. I would like to focus my time tonight on the exterior, just one portion, the exterior aesthetics of the building. As Jennifer mentioned, that we had worked with the architectural consultant through this PD process and made a number of revisions to the plan that we think improved the quality of the project. I think ultimately, upon a little bit of reflection, we wanted to propose an alternate here tonight. So I do have a board, if you'd like me to put up, or I do have 11 by 17s that we could pass out, and then also one.
Probably both would be great.
Okay, thank you. This is the elevation that is approved and in support, and then this is the proposed. And what we'll be focusing on, Commissioners, is really the extent of
Mr. Berg, can we get you to bring the mic with you so that we can hear? Great.
Sure. Okay. So the focus really is on the brick veneer application. Through this process, the architectural consultant had recommended that the entire base of the building be clad in brick, so all four sides. As you know, our building is a zero lot line building. We are pushed up onto Victory Lane, so one face is on Victory Lane. And I think on kind of further reflection on this, we looked at the existing buildings, and brick is used throughout the campus, but it's really used as a feature on the corners. Buildings aren't entirely clad in the brick. So what I wanted to bring forth today was a proposal to reduce really the quantity of brick, especially on Victory Lane, considering that is a service alley, and there's lots, that's really the back of house for the businesses on Santa Cruz Avenue. So I think we're happy with everything else in terms of the work that was done by the consultant, but we're really asking for a little bit of your time to reflect, or we can talk about just reducing the quantity of this one material on our building. So that's what I wanted to focus on. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Berg. Are there questions for Mr. Berg at this time? Commissioner Bourgeois.
Thank you, Mr. Berg. I'd like to talk about building height a little bit. It's
Sure.
It's been a while since the story poles are up, and I did get to see them.
I do have a board, with the pictures. And I think you probably have in your packet the photographs.
Right, and I did get to see them when they were up, but I was out there again today, and I've kind of a twofold question. One, could you remind me of the height of Howley Hall, just kind of for a comparison? I don't know if you know that offhand.
Howley Hall, I believe, was about 25 to the ridge line. The church is the ridge at the church is about 35, but then the tower, of course, is much
50.
taller.
Yeah. Okay. So, talk me through, because we have to make findings to justify going over the allowed height in the zone. So, can you talk to me about justification for going above 30 feet on this building? And in particular, we had suggestions by the consulting architect of, maybe lowering the floor height to below 10 feet on each floor to bring the height down. He thought aesthetically it was fine, but I would like to hear from your professional opinion as to why that height is necessary for this building.
Primarily, I'd say on the first floor, there's one large room that's a library, and so it's a large space. And to stay to the 30-foot height, I think counting on a reasonable ceiling height, which we feel is 10 or 11 feet in a large room like a library, and then counting on the interstitial space basically for the structure, for long span joists, the integration of ductwork, that was probably around 4 feet. And then again, another 10 feet or so for the upper floor rooms, and then some type of expressive roof. I mean, it's not that much of a slope, but it's not flat. That's really the reason, I think, on the aesthetic expression of the building, to not have a flat, essentially cube there, or a box type expression, and then getting really some reasonable ceiling heights in the classrooms. The reasonable ceiling heights, I think, add for plenty of display space. I mean, this is a junior high school library, so there's lots of kids' stuff that likes to get hung up and displayed on walls. Having adequate height for projectors, screens, that's really the reason that we're asking for the additional height. Right now, I think in our site is really two different heights, because on Victory Lane it's a little bit lower than the actual site that we're at. So I believe we're about 34 foot 8 inches, I think, at the tallest part. So we're asking tonight of the commissioners for an allowance of an additional 4.5 to 5 feet to make that happen, and to make this building a little bit more expressive than just a flat roof building. So that's the primary reason.
I have another question on a different topic. Is that okay? And you may not be the right person, because this is more about school operations than it is about the architecture. But I want to talk about the increase in the PD of the number of students. So I'm a little concerned and confused by the fact that we're going to go from 265 to 315, and the logic behind that is that we're going to match what is reality, which is what is happening at the school now. However, we're adding an entire grade. So how are we going to keep the student population as it is, and yet we're going to add an entire grade? So that confused me, so I'd like to hear someone talk about that. And then also, if we're keeping the same student body number, we're almost doubling the amount of staff. So I'd like some comment on, we're going from 20 to 36, so we're adding 16 staff. So I'd like to understand the rationale behind those numbers a little bit.
Well, I might defer to the parish to answer a few of those, but I think you have to focus on the fact that we're talking about the staff number is both school and parish, use the site. So I think you can't link the increase in students directly to school staff, because we're talking about the whole operation of the site. In terms of numbers, we're really K through 8, and I think the maximum number of students that we're talking about per room is 35. And so that is the multiplication. It's the 9 kindergarten plus the 8 grades times 35 gives us our number of 315. So I think when the school was designed, though, there was a lot more. What I understand, I think there was almost 50 children per room when it was opened in the 50s. So it's actually operating, I think, at a smaller load than when it was originally built. I don't know if that answers your question, but I would have to, if you want to ask specifics on the operation, I would want the parish to probably answer those questions.
Well, if someone from the parish has anything to add to that, that would be great. I think now would be
Sister Nikki,
the appropriate time, but
yeah,
thank you.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for all your help so far. Originally, we were first through 8th grade school when it opened in the 1950. It officially opened in 1955. At that time, there were up to 55 children in each classroom, but they were in straight rows with strict nuns in charge of them. Now I'm the token nun. As time went on, class size reduced. Then in about 12 to 14 years ago, our sisters operated Casa Maria, which was a Montessori school located on the convent property on 200 Prospect Avenue. Because of the aging sisters and our lack of ability to actually run the school by the sisters, they elected to close the Montessori school, and at that time we assumed the kindergarten into St. Mary's. So that added the kindergarten class. So that basically is where the number of students came from. As far as the increase in teachers, educationally, having one teacher for 30 to 35 children is not optimum. And so what we have done is try and increase reading specialists and math specialists who will work with smaller groups of children to better educate them and give them more individual time.
Just Sister Nikki, for the record, could we get you to tell us your name so that we can get it?
Sister Nikki Thomas, 200 Prospect Avenue.
May I ask a follow-up question? So in the staff report, the original staff report said the number of staff, they used an FTE figure as opposed to a head count figure of 36. So that number's grown in terms of the desk item from 36 to 53. Can you help us understand and I believe that's now a head count number as opposed to an FTE number, if I understand correctly from the staff. So could you help us understand, of the 53 head count, approximately how many work directly for the school and how many are parish employees? And if of the 53, any of the 53 are volunteer employees? And also if you have a sense of how many are part-time versus full-time, so we have some sense of, to help Commissioner Bourgeois and the rest of us understand.
Oh, that's another good point, because what used to be volunteer people that worked in our school are now people that get paid. As far as the total full-time, I'm now the president of the school, and our principal probably knows the exact number of full-time students now. Full-time and teachers? 17. And part-time 18 teachers, and then the rest are parish employees.
Other questions this time? Commissioner Smith.
While we're on this topic, Sister Nikki, you can probably answer this. So when this construction is going to take place, the children will not have a play area. Is that correct?
We have it designed. First of all, our hope is that we will be able to start building soon after school is finished for the school year. And our hope is that the construction, which would require more loss of our playground, will be finished by the time the students return in August. And at that time, they can lock down the area. So we have a revised plan as far as where the children will play. Also, our entrance and exit have been changed so that we won't disturb the traffic pattern during that time. It'll just be in different spots going through.
And then just a follow-up question, if I could, about circulation and parking of construction vehicles. I understand why Mr. Berg indicated that you did not want to use Linden, and I know that there's the nursery co-op there as well as the children coming in and out of St. Mary's. But then what is the solution besides parking in the neighborhood?
I'm going to have to defer to our builders for that. I don't.
Correct. And so, and the purpose of my asking this question of you is that oftentimes there is a requirement in the construction contract that personnel be in off-site parking someplace that is not in the neighborhood. And I just want to say that that's one of my personal concerns with this whole project, is what is going to happen with the parking of all these construction vehicles. I mean, the vehicles that the construction workers will use to get to the job. And we've addressed that before with other projects in town.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Again, I can't, that's not my expertise at all.
Thank you. Maybe Mr. Berg can...
Yeah, Commissioner Smith, I think most of the time my understanding is that we really work with staff during probably the grading permit phase with the town engineer to put in mitigation measures for construction traffic and parking. And that's, I mean, I think that's how it's been done in the past. So I think we would work with town staff to come up with a plan that's amenable to the town and neighbors in terms of parking.
That's it. I just want to make sure that
Sure.
you understand the sensitivity in the neighborhood is the parking, and we're very, we'd like to hear what the solutions are
Okay.
as well.
Other Commissioner O'Donnell.
I just want to clarify from Commissioner Smith, I think you're asking for an answer this evening, right? Yes. So I just want to make sure that Mr. Berg understands that nodding his head is probably not going to do it. So if you have anybody here that can give the answer, we'd appreciate that.
Well, I don't think we came in with a parking plan per se for construction traffic. I mean, this issue was raised yesterday at, I think, pretty late in the day. So, and my understanding is that I did not think that we had to come in with a plan for construction parking tonight on the zoning hearing. My thought was that it would be done.
Where the neighbors are very concerned, and I don't think that's a surprise.
No,
So
it's not.
just as this is the first time I've seen your changes.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the first time you realize that neighbors are sensitive about parking, but we kind of need an answer. So we can always continue it, but I don't think you'd want that.
I don't think.
So maybe if you could tell us how you're going to handle the parking, that would be helpful.
Commissioner Birch.
By any chance, is your builder here?
Yes, they are.
Perhaps he
Okay.
could address this.
Would you like to address? We do have, and we were provided a staging plan, I think, to staff just early today. I'm not sure if it addresses construction parking, though, for workers.
Might I suggest, Mr. Berg, wouldn't, after we go through the remainder of the public portion of the hearing and let the public speak, the applicant will have an opportunity to come back,
Okay.
and other members.
Sure.
Maybe it'd be great at that moment for you to attempt to
Mm-hmm.
address the question then.
Did you want us to answer it? Or
Unless you're
wanna
ready now, I'm just trying
go-
to.
Ready now? Or?
Good evening. My name's Tom Kojan. I'm with DevCon Construction. I'll be the project manager for the project. And as far as the parking, we would do everything we can to minimize, the parking on the adjacent streets. We would try to locate an area where we could park for our construction workers. And we do have buses that we could bus them from one point to another to take care of the concern you have with, people just parking all over the streets.
Commissioner Birch.
Have you, during any of your conversations with the town, reviewed using any public parking or anything? I know it's a common practice to leave the construction trucks there and shuttle them in. Has that been a part of any of the conversations you've had?
We really have not looked into this that much as far as exactly where the construction parking would be or finding a location. I understand your concern, and like I say, we would do whatever is needed to, bus them into the site. We would, we're trying to minimize the amount of space, like Sister was saying, in the playground area. Our intent there is to construct the project and get it up as fast as we can, the main structure, try to pull the fences in as close as we can when school resumes so that we're minimizing the amount of space.
Can I ask a follow-up question? What is your schedule and what is your proposed number of men then that will be on site?
Well, currently our schedule would be to start in June, and for the grading, the foundation, and also trying to get the plaster scaffold up so we could do that operation. The amount of men we'd probably have. In the beginning, you don't have that much for grading and foundations. We'd probably have possibly 10. But as we got into the framing and started getting more trades on site, you're probably going to be up to possibly 20. And I think that would probably be, maybe when we get into the finishes, you might pick up maybe 5 more, up 25. So,
Do you think your peak would be around the fall?
yeah, I think our peak would be, yes, it would be in the fall.
Commissioner Bourgeois.
I want to change gears a little bit, and it's probably back to Mr. Berg, if people are ready to move on from that topic. Just to be clear, I'm going to ask some really dumb questions to begin with, just to make sure we're on the same page. So where the existing building is, that's going to become a parking lot.
Correct, yes.
Right. And there's that relatively large Coast Live Oak right in front of the building.
Correct.
And that's what you're putting a tree well around and some pavers.
Yes, we are
Right.
proposing to keep that.
Okay, so my question is, there's a pretty sharp grade change right now, right there.
Mhm.
And if I look at the contour lines from the grading plan, it looks like you're coming right up to the base of the tree, which doesn't seem in compliance with the arborist recommendation. So can you maybe talk me through how you're going to even out that grade and save that tree? Because
Yes.
it doesn't make sense to me.
Actually, we worked with the town arborist. I met them on site, and we've talked about putting a wall around the lower side, and then there was to be a grate that basically spans that. So essentially keeping the root structure intact at grade where it is. The new parking lot would come up, but it's going to be held away from the tree. And I think you can probably see that as a cross section on the landscape.
Okay, so the tree is going to,
Yeah, the tree will remain.
when you say the lower side, you mean the Victory Lane side?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Okay, and so that's why the
Yes.
grading contour line comes up right to the corner of that well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, our intention is to preserve. It's a nice tree, so we want to preserve it.
Other questions of the applicant this time? Thank you very much.
Okay.
We'll now invite comments from members of the public. If we have some speaker cards, if there are other folks that would like to speak this evening, address the commission, we would invite you to turn a speaker card in at this time. We would first call on Sabine Lamb. And we would ask that you state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Sure. Hi, my name is Sabine Lam. I live on 101 Wilder, right across from the Holy Hole. Los Gatos is seeing an influx of families, and we do need to accommodate our growing number of students. Each neighborhood can push back as much as they want. We hear it from Hillbrook. You're going to hear it, I'm sure, for St. Mary's. But the reality is kids need to be educated, and public schools are already at capacity. So I believe that it's okay that St. Mary's grows its number of students. This said, as a neighbor and living right across from the street from Holly Hall, I have 2 questions or suggestions. I was wondering if there's any consideration for sustainable practice in your plan. I haven't heard anything tonight. I just heard more expressive design. I haven't heard anything about quality of light, quality of space for the students, quality of anything that's sustainable practice. So could it include energy saving, water efficiency, minimal light, noise pollution, but certainly for us is also limiting CO2 emission from traffic. And in that regard, traffic-wise, here's my suggestion. I highly suggest that we limit parking availability and replace it with vegetated space. So trees and green and very little space, and lack of parking space will spark interest for alternative transportation options. For example, encourage carpooling through incentive. Encourage the kids to ride their bikes or scooter. That's what we have at Fisher or Dave's Avenue. You see bike racks. You see storage space for scooters and skateboards, whatever. Encourage shuttles, and this should be included in your plan. So, I believe we're very lucky to have a safe neighborhood and should take advantage of it. Traffic does not have to be an issue if you take the time to educate the parishioners and the students and provide alternative solutions. I'd like to hear about alternative solutions. As a stakeholder as well, I'd like to be included in more of the planning meetings. And again, what is a better space than school to teach our kids about minimizing their impact on the environment? So sustainable should be part of your plan. Thank you.
Oops. Are there questions for Ms. Lamb? If not, Chuck Hammers.
Good evening. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Chuck Hammers. I live at 16230 Shannon Road in Los Gatos. I've got 4 kids, and they don't go to St. Mary's School. I did want to say that I agree with staff's position that I like the project that is being proposed. We have so many projects that come through this commission, that, especially the housing projects, that get fought because our schools public schools are over impacted, and I think one of the great answers is by having private schools being able to expand. So I see this as a good proposal. 1 out of 3 students in Los Gatos right now are going to private schools, and it's one of the highest percentages in Santa Clara County. And because of that, it's really helping our public schools keep their per dollar amount per student up in this town, which helps our real estate. So thank you, and I hope you pass this.
Are there questions for Mr. Hammers? If not, we will call Chris Potter.
Good evening. My name is Chris Potter. I live at 33 Tate Avenue, which is the house directly across the street from the ingress and egress of St. Mary's on Tate. We lived there for many years, and so we are eyewitnesses to what happens every day going in and out. I think we see that more than anybody who works or goes to the school, because we are actually, have a perfect view of what goes on with traffic around the neighborhood. Just to let you know what's going on currently with the number of students that are there. The traffic in the morning is chaotic on Tate, and I think probably on Bean as well. There is no regulated egress or ingress to the property from Tate. It's unmonitored and unregulated, and people speed in and out of it very rapidly. According to the calculations, with more students, more traffic, that situation will get worse by 20%. That's what the numbers are telling us with people coming in and out. In the afternoon, both Bean and Tate are backed up, so it becomes effectively a one-way street. You can't get through, in and out, as people line up to pick up kids. So it's really a severe traffic problem already. I haven't even talked about parking on the street. We have a petition in front of the Traffic and Parking Commission now to regulate and put permit parking on the 0 to 99 block of Tate, because we don't have any. We're the only street that doesn't have permit parking at night. That will not impact the parish or the school during the day, but we already have a severe traffic problem made worse by the recent construction on Tate and limiting more parking we have there. So generally speaking, I think that traffic is going to be worse, and it's already bad enough and unregulated on Tate and Bean. It's just a matter of time before somebody or their dog gets run over, I think, unless something is done to try to regulate the traffic in and out. Parking will get worse. We know that in terms of space on the on Tate Avenue, and Bean probably too, unless, as Sabine said, more action is taken, I think, and proactive to encourage people not to park there during school hours, staff and teachers, I guess, primarily. None of us are opposed to more schools. I think we haven't heard anybody opposed to more school on the site, but we are very concerned about the traffic and how it's going to impact the parking that's there already, problems that we have. So.
Thank you, Mr. Potter. Any questions for Mr. Potter? You can address the commission, but not ask questions.
So, hi, my name is David Lamb, and I live on 101 Wilder. And I represent probably a class or a category of residents who may be not informed, because we either go to work early and we come home late. So, based on the information I've gathered tonight, I see where you get the 20%. But the question is it really a 20% impact, right? We have 20% more individuals going to the school, but really, how does traffic patterns really, how does it really impact it, right? We know that if there's a shift or addition of a few percentage to highway traffic, you know what happens, it gets backed up, right? So I haven't seen the traffic reports or any reports. As far as I know, until recently, I wasn't aware of the expansion of the school. So my question is, where do you get your information, Chris, and how do we get more information, right? Because I don't know what the real impact is. I grew up in the city, so I'm used to traffic. I know what I bought into, but what am I getting into now, or what am I getting into next? I'm not opposed to the school improving itself. I think that's a great thing. And but what are we really getting? That's my question.
Commissioner Bourgeois.
Could I actually ask a clarifying question of staff at this point? Because I think there might be some confusion, and I want to make sure I understand these numbers.
Do we have questions for Mr. Lamb?
I do not have a question
Okay.
for Mr. Lamb.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. Thank you.
Okay. Can I make one more point? Okay, really
Sure.
quick.
Okay.
20% based on the number of students coming in. There's the multiplier effect, meaning there's activities that are associated with it. There's going to be additional parents and such. So really that 20% might be 30, 40, just food for thought.
So my question to staff, and I wanted to ask this just to make sure we all have the same understanding, is that in real students, there's not going to be an increase. This is simply increasing the CUP to match what is currently going on at the school. So the only net real increase would be the increase in staff at the school that's being proposed. But the student number, is that correct or not?
You're correct on the student number, but it's the same situation for staff as well.
So they're out of compliance already with the staffing numbers, and so all we're doing now is bringing the CUP to match existing conditions, give or take.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bourgeois. Stephanie Lynott.
My name is Stephanie Lynott, and I'm the fourth grade teacher at St. Mary's, and I've been there 35 years and also 8 years as a student, so I'm very well aware of traffic and the issues that go on there. And I can understand the neighborhood and their concerns without a doubt. However, I also see that Los Gatos is so unique because our schools, public, all butt up against business, residential, and school. Los Gatos High gets out of school, and I learned living on the hill, you never come downtown between 2:30 and 3:30 because the town is gridlocked from Los Gatos High. And in fact, tonight I even saw that they have signs now reserving parking for the students on Main Street. Blossom Hill, since I live on Union, I traverse Blossom Hill all the time, and I've gotten hung up in their pickup and drop off. And they're parking on Blossom Hill Road, they're parking on Cherry Blossom, they're near a business, and Louise Van Meter, you got the same situation at Louise Van Meter, you have the same situation at Fisher. It gridlocks everything, and it's just a way of life in this town. I'm not saying it's right, and I'm not saying I like it, but St. Mary's, it's not unique to St. Mary's. In this town, because of the size of it, gridlocks whenever schools are opened and closed. And I know that we as a faculty address pick-up and drop-off constantly, because of our insurance policies that even go with that. We have to follow strict guidelines on that. So, yes, we do go on, I don't know, I see more downtown employees parking on the side streets than any of us. And I see downtown employees parking on our property, because we have parking lots between the gym and the rectory. We have parking on the other side of the rectory and on the back side that's not even impacted by this development. So there's parking for staff. So as far as that parking issue, I understand it on a neighborhood sense, but I also see it as an epidemic thing in the town because most schools are in residential neighborhoods, business, and this town gridlocks. That's all.
Are there questions for Ms. Lynott? Thank you. Robert Muscat.
Good evening. I'm Robert Muscat. I'm the homeowner at 155 Masole, about a block and a half away from the school. I've lived in the Almond Grove for the last 16 years. In that time, I've seen St. Mary's Church and St. Mary's School are a vibrant and active part of our community. My daughter graduated last year from St. Mary's as an honor student in high school now. My son will graduate in 3 months. So they were well served by the old buildings, but it is well past time to renew St. Mary's, just as the town renewed its public schools. I think that St. Mary's leadership has proposed a very modest and necessary project. And I think other than updating the town's paperwork, St. Mary's is not asking for an increase in enrollment, is not asking for an increase in traffic impact. In my years as a St. Mary's parent, I have seen the extraordinary efforts that the school has put into educating parents on minimizing the impact of traffic. St. Mary's is a good neighbor and has more than earned the right to continue being a central part of our neighborhood. I urge you to approve St. Mary's plans without delay. Thank you.
Question for Mr. Muscat? If not, thank you. Seeing no other members of the public who would like to speak at this time, we would now give the applicant. Hold on. Okay. Please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Annette Nystrom, and I'm at 219 Alexander Avenue in Los Gatos. I also own property on Almendra Avenue and another house on Alexander Avenue. That also has families going 2 Days Avenue in St. Mary's. I myself am a St. Mary's graduate, and I walk my children to St. Mary's School every day. So I'm quite aware of any type of traffic problems that there are. We've seen dogs, we've seen neighborhood cats get run over. We've seen lots of fun things. One time I found $20, so that was that was fun. Anyhow, I just wanted to just point out an observation that I have is that when Dave's Avenue constructed their new school and all the other surrounding schools, they had a lot of public or neighborhood support because their children did go to those schools. I just want to remind you that St. Mary's facilitates or educates children in all the areas. Los Gatos, Saratoga, I don't know how far, but we have children that come from in all areas. So you might not always get the neighborhood support that you might be looking for. So just kind of as a heads up for that. I just wanted to also remind you, as the past St. Mary's Country Fair chair, which is a huge undertaking that St. Mary's does for the community, we do offer so many events that we offer to the community that service the neighborhoods and Los Gatos as a whole that we really feel proud to present to the town. So so there was that. Also, in regards to construction, I want to remind you that there was a new construction that happened across the street, a parking lot at St. Mary's Church, that when we walked to school every day, we would have to navigate, thank you. See, the teachers are still teaching me. Through that, and there was at least 15 trucks, because I talked to a lot of the construction people, that were parking in the St. Mary's School parking lot every day, all day long for the last 3 months. That house was just completed and sold as of a week ago. But so those things do happen that I want to remind the neighborhoods that construction is inconvenient and nobody likes the parking. We have another project up the street that's going on, and it's, it is a project, but it is temporary. So I just wanted to remind people. I know you guys know that. And my time's up, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the speaker? If not, we would now invite the applicant back for up to 3 minutes to make any additional comments.
Yes. In terms of education for parking and traffic flow, we did through this process demonstrate to staff that the church and the school do a good job in trying to educate parents about pickup and drop-off times and other methods for controlling parking. So I think there was a number that we've provided to staff during that time, showing samples of the letters that are sent home, things that are distributed in the bulletin, I think things that are sent home through the children's paperwork to those parents. So I just wanted to point that out to the commissioners, that they do this on an ongoing basis, and we can only hope that our parents follow along with the recommendations. Thank you.
Are there additional Commissioner O'Donnell?
Because you're there, and we'll close the public portion of this soon, and then people sit there and say, why didn't I say something? So to try to avoid that, I'm going to ask a question that I'm merely guessing will come up when we close the hearing. It seems like one of the concerns is the parking of the construction, and I think your contractor indicated that a high of 25.
Right.
He also indicated that they have a bus and there are things that can be done. Before we discuss it, because we don't have the intimate knowledge that you do, I want to give you an opportunity to make some suggestions to us as in your judgment or your contractor's judgment, the best way to handle that, because once we close this, you may find out that we're going to impose a condition that had you spoken to, we could have fine-tuned better. So I just want to give you that opportunity.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. So based on the numbers that we were talking about in workers on a daily basis, I think we believe we could probably accommodate up to about half of those numbers on site, probably in the space between Howley Hall and Cougar's Corner. We can carve out some area there that's not part of the play area and is underutilized right now. The balance could absolutely be bussed in. This is a method that we've used. Actually, I've worked with this contractor on another very impacted site, and we did negotiate with a local property owner. In this case, it was a retail lot, and workers were allowed to park there during the day, and then they had a driver at different times during the day making runs back and forth. I mean, primarily in starting time and quitting time. So that is one method that we would be open to, and I think would probably address some of the concerns in terms of having excess construction vehicles on the side streets.
Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Sayoc.
One of the issues that we've had when the surrounding neighborhood has concerns about upcoming traffic and parking is that there's a meeting prior to construction beginning, and there's a point person that they can always call on. Without having looked at the conditions of approval, do you plan on having both?
We haven't discussed that yet, but I know with this particular contractor, I've worked a number of many years with them, and that is something that we have done. We've had actually an opening barbecue kind of thing and invited neighbors and discussed the project and talked about hours. And then there will always be a number, and we've done this primarily in San Jose. It's a requirement that you post basically a sign and have a telephone number that people can call 24 hours, 24/7 to report an issue, and that goes directly to the contractor, and then they could try to address that. But public outreach, it's not unfamiliar to us, and I think in this case, and the sensitivity that I'm hearing to the neighbors would absolutely be something that we'd be wanting to do.
Okay, thank you. And I see that your contractor is also nodding
I'm
his
not
head.
committing him to something that he's
And
shaking
so,
his head saying.
And so
What are you
once we
thinking?
close the public portion, I'll ask commissioners whether they feel like we can make that a condition of approval if it's not already.
Other questions at this time? Commissioner Birch.
Just a follow-up question to that. The phone number that's typically posted, is that like an on-site superintendent or somebody that has the ability to make immediate changes if there's an issue?
Basically, it's the superintendent, and that person is basically, he's going to be living, he is the main point contact for the job, and it's typically his cell phone. So there's other way, you can call to a service and then that they contact an appropriate person. But I think the important thing is that there's a number posted that's available that people can call, and they know they're going to get a result, basically. Yeah.
Commissioner Smith.
Just have we've been talking about external and construction, and now I just want to talk about the buildings themselves and just ask you a question.
Sure.
I know that St. Mary's has been in the past very generous with their facilities, and so what I'm wondering, in this new building, is there going to be any meeting room? I didn't quite get that from the plans that I looked at, that would be available to the public.
So the new building is, the lower floor is primarily a library, and then there's one classroom. Upstairs, there's 3 classrooms, so grades 6, 7, 8, and then the science lab. The library on the lower floor, I said, is a large space, and I think the school does use that, I think, for probably back-to-school night or parent-teacher, basically getting the message out to a larger audience. So there is that space. I think I would leave it up to them to make that, if that's available. I know that they do a lot of things in terms of community benefit, which you probably read in your report, in terms of groups that they host on site and allow to meet there. If there's a specific need, I would probably ask either Father Rick or Sister Nikki to address that directly.
And then just one final comment. I believe you've heard tonight that we are strongly urging you to have a neighborhood meeting, and you're saying that, yes, you're going to do that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Prior to construction, yes. As
Correct.
a kickoff and orientation, yes.
Orientation
Yes.
in particular.
Yeah.
Thank
Not
you.
unfamiliar to us.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bourgeois.
And that segues right into my question. I was wondering if there had been any community neighborhood meetings or outreach prior to design, and if anything, if the church received any comments when the story poles went up. I mean, that's usually when people recognize, hey, something's going on here, and then they contact.
Yes.
So I would, if you could explain
Yeah, my
that.
understanding, there wasn't, I mean, we did post, the numbers and the people call. I know Terry had fielded, I think, just one call, and I think it was somebody that she's worked with on issues already, and they were satisfied with the response that we had given. So, yeah.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
I want to go back to the brick. I'd
Yes.
forgotten to raise the question of the brick. Your suggestion on essentially cutting back on the amount of brick.
Minimizing, correct.
Is that
Commissioner.
essentially a financial
It is
concern?
yes, yeah. I mean, there is a substantial amount of money to put brick on the entire lower floor. There's also another impact in that you're adding a lot of weight to the building, and seismic forces are a function of weight. So if we're adding a brick around the entire base, we've made the building heavier. It just means the structure gets a little heavier too. So it's kind of a dual impact. You're paying for the brick, but you're also paying for a little bit beefier structural system too. Yeah, and then it's, I had mentioned before, maybe more politely, but the idea of cladding this whole new building in brick on Victory Lane, I'm sure commissioners have been over there and seen. I mean, it's really it's the back alley service entrance. So, feeling that we're putting a fairly expensive material in an alleyway. So that was another driver, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Okay.
Other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Smith.
Perhaps we should have you state for the record about the green building of the building and your plans for that.
Yeah, well, right now we're not there's not a specific town requirement to meet LEED or anything like that. We are putting in, some of the things that we are putting in is a pretty high performance mechanical multi-zone system, which is very efficient. We will be, of course, conforming to the California regulations on VOC, so interior materials are low emissivity. And that's a tough word, but off-gassing is minimized. We also meet, highly efficient light fixtures and kind of your basic things that are codified in the building code and in state law in terms of environmental protections. But at this time, we are not proposing to meet any set LEED guideline or go through that process.
Other questions of the applicant? If not, thank you, Mr. Berg.
Okay.
We will now close the public portion of the public hearing and ask the commissioners if they have further questions for the staff, comments, or want to introduce a motion for consideration by the commission. While other members of the commission are contemplating, I would ask the staff to, I believe there's a portion of the town code which provides for a continuation of non-conforming uses that apply to churches that might be applicable to the parking requirement.
Correct, as stated previously by Ms. Savage, Section 2910-195 of the Town Code speaks to the church uses and school uses can continue interminably as non-conforming uses. Additionally, there's some further language later on in that section that speaks to basically obtaining or providing to the maximum extent practical additional parking as necessary. And Ms. Savage spoke in her opening remarks regarding the increase from when they gained approval in 85 to their current situation.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
2 points. Paragraph 84 of the required findings, just to call to everybody's attention, does have a neighborhood construction communications plan. So that is there. But the other thing I'd like to hear from my fellow commissioners on is there's a request that we essentially remove a lot of brick. And nobody's commented on that. And so if whoever makes a motion will have, at least in front of them, the request that we adopt the most current plan, which the first time I saw was tonight. But we haven't discussed that. So I'm just asking for any comments my fellow commissioners may have.
Commissioner Bourgeois.
All right, I'll kick it off. I'm going to go straight down the list of all the issues that we need to address tonight. The first is the PD. I think the PD is appropriate. I don't know about creating an optimum use of open space, but I do think it's encouraging good design or better design on the site. So I think that's an appropriate avenue. The one thing that concerns me about the PD and increasing the numbers to match the existing uses. So the original PD was in 1985. The school has changed and grown through the years, and they're now exceeding their existing CUP. And so I'm just concerned that maybe it's short-sighted to think that we draw a line in the sand today and the school is going to stay like that for another decade or so. So I'm concerned that what we're approving is maybe not realistic, and I would like maybe to consider some sort of, and we wouldn't know what the school enrollment is going to be unless they come back to us for another application and they self-report. So just wondering if there's any mechanism to have like an annual report from the school to the town, just to make sure they're within some margin of error of the CUP and they're not growing, and so we get problems like we have elsewhere where schools are expanding and we're not aware of it. So that's one thing I'm concerned about. Moving on to the exceptions we need to grant, I think the fence height exception, which no one's really talked about yet, I think is completely justified. It makes a lot of sense and it's very reasonable, so I see no problem granting that. I do have a little problem with the height exception. I've read the letter of justification. I asked the applicant again to explain the justification for it. I understand a library, public space, a big open space needs a tall ceiling, but we're talking about over 4 feet over the maximum allowed in the zone, and that's going to be almost 10 feet higher than Howley Hall, which is right next door, which if you walk down that corridor, it's a pretty tall building. So I'm just concerned about the maximum height. Maybe I'm the only one, but that's something that I'm struggling with. The parking issue, I think the fact that we're operating under existing conditions and we're just kind of memorializing existing conditions, I don't think we're going to see an increase in the impacts to the neighbors, but the impacts are real and they're manifesting now, and I am concerned about during construction. So I like the proposals that were prompted earlier. Community benefit, we haven't really talked about either, but if we need to discuss the community benefit of a church, then I think we're all in trouble. So I don't think that's a real issue. And then the ANS application itself. So the brick, I see the logic behind this partial reduced brick option, but we do strive for 360-degree architecture, and I do not like the complete blank wall in the Victory Lane elevation. I mean, it is an alley, but I mean, one of the mantras of Los Gatos architecture is that we always want 360-degree architecture. So, and there are a lot of people that use that lane, and that's going to be a massive wall without anything to kind of break up the elevation. So, again, not trying to design from up here, but I don't mind the reduced brick option with that one exception. So those are my thoughts.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
I'd just like to speak to the height issue. Commissioner Bourgeois is correct in his remarks, but I was on the school board for 22 years, and I remember when we did things. And if you go to Fisher, for example, and look at the two-story building there, or if you go to Blossom Hill and look at the two-story building there, I think there's a reason they need this height, and I would agree, perhaps in a perfect world, if we were building houses or something, I'd feel more strongly about it. But I do think because it's a school, and I do think because of the location being back where it is, backing up to a theater, which is about the same height, I would be much more sympathetic to that height than I would under all other circumstances. So I just wanted to point that out. And as I say, if you go to Fisher, or if you go to Blossom Hill, you will see buildings that are taller than that. And that's partly because the public schools don't have to come here. They don't have to come to planning. And then the legislature did that for a good reason. They didn't want to come to planning. So I think when we deal with private schools, we should at least be somewhat sympathetic to their situation. So I am sympathetic to that, and so I just point that out. And so I think as all of the issues that Commissioner Bourgeois has mentioned, I think we have answers. The only one open was the brick, and I guess there is a way to compromise on that without, I will admit that one wall facing Victory Lane is uniquely ugly without something on it. And so that is something to consider. We might ask staff to come up with some way to soften that wall as it faces on Victory, and leave that to their discretion. They could do brick if there's no better, cheaper, structurally easier solution. But I would like to cooperate with the school on that if I could, but that's not nearly as critical to me as the height of the building. So let me see what else. I think that's all. The rest of the things that Commissioner Bourgeois mentioned, I think, are being taken care of.
I guess Commissioner Sayoc.
Thank you, Chair. I'll use the list of issues that Commissioner Bourgeois had started off. In terms of the annual reporting, I would like to concur with that and see if we can do something like that. With regards to the actual CUP and the fact that it's been I guess we've been out of compliance, while I don't necessarily like the idea of changing the CUP to reflect existing uses that were out of compliance, I see the fact that we have been operating with these numbers and there have been no negative community complaints. I think attests that there hasn't been significant impact to the surrounding community, and so I'm somewhat comfortable with changing that new number. But I do want to make sure that we do get some annual reporting, whether it's annual or biannual, just to make sure that these numbers don't dramatically increase without the town knowing of these changes. In terms of the fence, I think the request to increase the height is a reasonable request. Oftentimes I'm in that alleyway and I do take a look at the kids, and I've always wondered about that dilemma that parents have if that's ever been an issue. And so I think it's a reasonable request to have that fence there separating the public lot from the elementary uses. In terms of the height of the building, I was on site yesterday and today, and I was on site at the campus as well as the surrounding area. And I actually didn't find the height increase too much when I'm standing outside of St. Mary's. It wasn't too much of a dramatic height. I do see the difference when you're actually there next to the existing hall. But actually, if you're just walking down in the surrounding area, I don't think the increase in height would bother me. And so I'm quite comfortable with that request. The parking is something that gave me a lot of pause as I was reviewing the report and as I'm sitting here. Again, it's a neighborhood concern that not only this particular neighborhood significantly feels, but all the neighborhoods, as someone had attested to, that surround schools will always feel that impact. I know with my own children, whenever I go and drop off and pick up, I always feel like I'm intruding on the surrounding neighborhood. And because you know of that, hopefully those parents are sympathetic and try their best to be less intrusive and less cumbersome and less bothersome to the neighborhood. But anything that St. Mary's can do to really just hammer into the parents that this is a neighborhood. There are safe routes to school that we've strongly emphasized to towns. Anything you can do for carpooling, anything you can do to just really minimize the traffic impacts and the air emissions. And I mean, a lot of that, I think the great thing about this generation is they're very in tune with the changes, the green changes that we're trying to incorporate into our lessons. And so I would really ask St. Mary's just to make sure that that's part of your curriculum and part of your outreach to the students. In terms of the A&S and the brick, I find that the request to reduce and minimize the brick a reasonable one. In terms of the east elevation, I do agree that just this significant concrete wall on Victory Lane is a bit much. This is something that I would be comfortable deferring to staff if they'd like to work with the applicant to see if maybe we can add a little bit more brick, just find some way to soften this. If you want to utilize the consulting architect a little bit more, that's one area that I would feel comfortable deferring. But with regards to the overall plan development application, I'm quite comfortable with it, and as of right now, feel that I would be giving it my support.
Thank you, Commissioner Sayoc. Commissioner Smith.
I concur with my fellow commissioners. I do believe that St. Mary's is a valuable asset to the community. I do believe also that there may come a time when we're going to see increased numbers at St. Mary's, and that wouldn't be such a bad thing for the community. And however, I am concerned that we put such a limit on the CUP, although I'm comfortable supporting an increase in the CUP tonight because it does reflect reality, but I do believe that we're going to see this problem come back to us again. Secondly, though, I do want to say that I would add to the requirements a conditional of approval, to the condition of approval that we have a construction plan in place to manage the construction traffic during the entire time of construction to keep the workers' trucks off of the streets, the neighborhood streets, and that needs to be a requirement. Also that the neighborhood meetings, I believe, could have or should have taken place perhaps earlier, but now they do need to take place so that the neighborhood is on board. And we've heard from many neighbors tonight that do appreciate St. Mary's, and I know that they are a good partner to the community, but now we have to make sure that we don't see, the construction is going to be cumbersome and troublesome, and some neighbors on Tate reading the letters, they talk about the condition of their street and the ambling construction trucks. So that's why I'm going to be very firm in my vote for this if it has a construction plan to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. I'll take a crack at my own comments. I think the fence height is quite reasonable for all the reasons that fellow commissioners mentioned. I am worried about the structure height also, and where I ended up on that issue was if I legitimize the amount of square footage that they need to accomplish what they're doing, and that the lower floor of the junior high building needs to have a high ceiling, seems like to me the option would be to construct a single-story building on that space and another single-story building on the space, which I think would be a less desirable option than living with a little bit of height, given also where it is on the site. It's at an edge of the site where it's probably the least intrusive, if you would, in terms of height. So that's kind of where I ended up with saying that it was probably the best solution given what needed to be accommodated from a needs basis for the school. I think probably the 315 students is probably, I would be very surprised if they would grow above that number. That's 35 in a classroom, average class size of 35, which seems to me they're pushing the envelope at 35 to what they can quote sell quote, I don't mean that schools sell but what they can literally sell to people who would come to the school. So, but I think we should be concerned about it not growing beyond that, because I think from an educational standpoint, they push the envelope. They've also pushed the envelope in terms of what the site can reasonably accommodate without some greater significant impacts on the neighborhood. So I would be very sympathetic and would want us to put in whatever sort of strong language that we could to ensure that that's the upper limit. It may even save them from themselves from an educational standpoint. And I don't think I have anything else to add. Oh, wait a minute. So let me go back to the brick thing, the bricks. So I actually like the front elevation better with less brick on it from a design standpoint. It makes it more consistent with other buildings on the site, I believe, if I remember the buildings correctly. I would just like to see the same kind of treatment, and without trying to be specific about what that is, carried around the building. I don't know how many bricks that means. If it's 1 brick or 100 bricks, I don't know the answer to that question, but I would carry the same kind of architectural style, because while it faces onto an alley, it's not an alley which doesn't have entrances to other places from that alley across the other side of the alley if you walk the full distance of the alley. So it would seem like to me quite appropriate to have a similar treatment on the full round of the building. Other comments? Or we could take a break, or we could enter a motion.
Unless somebody else wants to do it, I'll try to cobble together a motion, and I'll invite my fellow commissioners. I'm sure I'll forget some of the things that you want.
The staff would like to add some of their wisdom to our deliberations.
Well, I just want to point out that there are conditions in both the architecture and site application and the plan development application that require a construction management plan, which will address all of the issues that have been spoken about tonight, in addition to the conditions that are that Commissioner O'Donnell pointed out regarding the weekly email updates to the neighborhood as construction progresses. So I think those are standard conditions. The weekly email notice may not be a standard condition, but the construction management plan certainly is, and it will take construction, parking, hours, deliveries, ingress, egress, routes into consideration as part of that plan.
Commissioner Sayoc.
And could I just clarify, there will be a 24/7 number that residents can call if there's a car parked in front that, if there are significant problems, there's a number they feel they can call that will address those issues?
Yeah, typically that is the superintendent, and it is unfortunately their cell phone, and so they are available 24 hours
Okay, thank
a day.
you.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
All right, I'm going to have to rely on but I'll make a motion to approve, to forward the mitigated negative declaration with a recommendation of approval, to forward the plan development and architecture site application to the council for a recommendation of approval, and that we would make the findings which are required and are set forth in our Exhibit 3 fully. And as I said, recommend that the town council make the mitigated negative declaration and adopt the mitigation monitoring plan, which is set forth in Exhibit 5. Recommend that the town council adopt the plan development ordinance, which is Exhibit 11, and approve the project as proposed, except as to the extent that we will now make some additions to that. And recommend the town council approve architecture and site application S12-098 with recommended conditions of approval as set forth in Exhibit 4. And now, as far as the modifications from that motion I just made, I'll try to hit the points. Commissioner Smith, notwithstanding that there is a requirement of a construction plan, wants that construction plan to be very, very clear about the number of parking spaces, trucks, workers, trucks, vehicles that can be parked on site. And the offer has been made to have a bus which would transport the others. So I think I heard that the maximum number of construction vehicles would be those which would be accommodated on site. The number roughly of 10 was given, but that's not the critical issue. The critical issue is how many can actually be on site. Anything that would not otherwise be on site would have to be off site in some location approved by the town, and some form of vehicular access to bring the workers would have to be used. As far as the brick request, which we've received this evening, what I've heard is that a lot of the design in the front of what I'll call the front and sides of the building appear to be okay. The back of the building, fronting on Victory Lane, needs some modification, and I think the commission is comfortable with allowing the staff to come up with a reasonable suggestion on how to make sure it is not just a monotonous stucco double wall. What else?
Reporting?
And that at least annually, the school submit a report as to the maximum number of students which are being serviced by the school and the maximum number of employees which are employed on site within the numbers we've been given this evening. Anything else? If not, that's the motion.
Motion by Commissioner O'Donnell. Is there a second?
I can second. I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Smith. Is there further discussion of the motion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. It will be agendized and at the appropriate moment with the appropriate public notice in front of the town council. Mr. Paulson, do we have a report from the Director of Community Development?
Yeah, it's just a couple items just to continue. The Albright draft EIR is out. The deadline for comments on the draft EIR is tomorrow, 5 p.m. There's also a notice of preparation for the North 40 out, and scoping comments are due by Friday, this Friday at 5 p.m. That's the preliminary portion of the scoping. There'll be additional opportunities to comment on the environmental document when it comes forward. Third, the NOP for Hillbrook School is also out, and comments for that must also be received by tomorrow on the draft EIR.
We would ask we're happy for you to visit with each other, but out in the lobby area while the meeting goes on. Thank you.
And the last thing I just wanted to bring to the commission's attention is last November, the council approved a height demonstration plan for the Albright Office Park, basically an exception to the story pole policy. They will be putting up story poles 3 weeks before the Planning Commission hearing when that gets agendized, and then obviously 3 weeks before the council hearing as well. They have also this week done an additional demonstration starting Monday, going till Friday. They had a neighborhood meeting with the Charter Oaks neighborhood, and so it was an opportunity to kind of work out the kinks, see where they were going. So any of you that may have noticed some of those lifts with the story pole netting and wood framed areas would have noticed that, and those again will be up again prior to any Planning Commission hearing, which we assume is going to happen sometime next month in April.
Commissioner Bourgeois.
Wasn't there a scoping meeting on the 6th? Was that for the NOP?
Sorry, you're right. The scoping meeting already did occur for the North 40. That was on the 6th.
How was it? How was attendance, or did you get a lot of attendance or comments on at that meeting?
We probably had 6 people actually speak. There was probably 20, 25 in the audience, but 6 that actually spoke.
Okay.
Any members of the commission have other matters for the commission? I have one, a belated happy birthday to Ms. Bailey. Since we have not had a commission meeting since her last birthday. And we're adjourned.
Thank you.